Hello guys and welcome to Fiat Lux. Today on the show we have LunarDAO. So we're going to talk about privacy, surveillance, LunarPunks and LunarDAO. So welcome guys.
Thank you, thank you for having on.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to have you on. So my first question, we're going to dive straight into it. Hopefully we're going to explain to people why they should care about privacy, why it's important, what kind of tools they can use, and just, the basics of why they should care about this. So I want to start with, how governments and powerful individuals exploit the privacy of individuals. So how is that done? How are people being exploited?
Right. So, repression has manifolds, especially in the world of crypto, we have massive examples of how government repression and surveillance have made huge damages. I mean, we all know here the case of Tornado Cash, of course, Persef being persecuted, blacklisting Tornado Cash and everything. So surveillance, we need to understand this, is massive. It's a massive system, and it really impacts on everyone's life. It is something that everyone has to be concerned with. It doesn't just, it's not just about a company or an activist, a political person, or someone, publicly exposed, or someone who is into crypto. No, it's something that is for everyone. So repression on developers and crypto people, if one of the biggest examples we can bring, of course, because this is our sphere. But something we would like to focus on is how privacy has basically been criminalized. We can call this an ideological attack somehow. The fact that regular people, are made to think that if you want privacy, you must be doing something wrong. If you want to be anonymous, it's because you're either a criminal or someone with bad intentions or a pedophile or something. And this ideological attack has been very effective. Government policies have put this thought in the mind of people, but this couldn't be farther from the truth, really. If when it comes to online privacy, it's probably difficult to make people understand. Maybe people who are not super into tech in the first place, it's difficult to make them understand that is something very valuable, because you probably don't perceive it. If someone right now came into my house, started searching among, I don't know, my wardrobe or my drawers or whatever, looking for information, and I couldn't do anything about it, I would be extremely upset, right? I would be probably terrified also. That's something pretty intense. But if that happened with our data, if it happens, surveilling your phone or surveilling your calls or your computer or whatever, people are like, yeah, that's quite fine, because we are not educated to online privacy and our presence online. So yeah, there is a massive amount of material out there for people who want to do a little bit of research. There are actually a lot of some very practical examples of how governments from around the world have been violating users' privacy, citizens' privacy. Some examples are actually pretty famous. I believe you are familiar with some publications by WikiLeaks. There's a publication from 2017 that's called Volve 7. It is quite incredible, to be honest. They basically published how US intelligence spies on regular users and collects and saves data. Right, it's pretty interesting, to be honest. Well, other publications, again from WikiLeaks from the same year, 2017, published something similar about CIA. So this tool by CIA called Leaping Angel that was actually designed by some sensors, and it's a tool to record audio from the mic, the built-in mic in the Samsung Smart TV thing, and it collects and stores all the data. Another massive example is Pegasus. This is pretty famous. It's if it's true by NSO, which is Israeli company, pretty close to the government, and it's basically a surveillance tool, and it have been purchased by many governments around the world, including Saudi Arabia, India, Hungary, and many others. So yes, these are quite some examples of how governments from all over the world, and I mean it all over the world, no government is safe from this, how governments from all over the world violate their citizens' privacy in the name of, security. But that's not how security works. And, privacy is not just something you can give away so easily in the name of some security. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was great. Some really good points there. One of the things, you mentioned that people sort of have this kind of script that they run off where they say, if if you're not doing anything wrong, why do you need privacy? And then, you gave a great example. The example I usually give is, just because it's quite a potent one, is to say, okay, well, let me put a camera in your bathroom then. And immediately they recognize, well, actually, no, I do care about my privacy and I don't want to be surveilled. And so it's not just as black and white as people make out, right? It's not just, oh, you're a criminal, you're doing something wrong. There are obvious instances in your life and, think places where you go, your environment, places where you want privacy and you don't want to be surveilled. I also think it's a...
Right, absolutely. I will also have to ask Harriet about this. No, I think you covered it very well. I want to just maybe add that it is very important to bring these topics out and bring as simple examples as you just did, as well as like the deeper one, how the deep state works, because more we expose these things and more people understand and see how the regulation is imposed on everyday life, then there will be bigger thirst for anonymity and privacy. Make choice so just as it was said right now. But on the other hand, the development of these tools of anonymity and privacy will also result in stronger regulations. So there is this loop, and this loop we believe is inevitable. So instead of trying to close our eyes to this reality, we have chosen to expand that forest, as we call it, now to build a sanctuary where the society can autonomously redefine itself, self-administrate, and regain its particular economic, political, and moral agency. I think coming from that analysis into why we're doing that, this is like the main objective and outcome of this loop of regulations versus anonymity and privacy.
Yeah, no, I think I was going to add that, one thing that people maybe don't know, or they're naive to it, or they're ignorant to it, is that even things like, for example, in the UK, when there's a vote and an election, you're sort of obligated to register, or they call it the electoral register. You're obligated to register for this so that you can vote. But when you actually read the paperwork that they send you, you quickly find that hidden at the back is we will sell this data on unless you opt out. And you can't just opt out on the form. You actually have to go online, download a separate form, and then opt out. There's an opt out form that's completely separate. So they're harvesting your data, and it says in plain English, like we were going to use this data and we're going to sell it on unless you opt out. And I just thought that's kind of sneaky. That's like something that's maybe quite close to people. Most people understand, at least in the UK, and imagine in other like Western European countries, that there's an electoral register. That's just the way things are done, and they're actually selling your data. And maybe another quick example is you have to think about your political opinions, right? Well, like if you are surveilled and all the time, are you really free, right? This is a point I heard Rachel Rose O'Leary bring up a while back, and I thought it was quite an interesting one to think about. That in some sense, like, are you ever free to act the way you want, or to talk to people, tell people your opinions about certain political things, if you're surveilled, like or is there this kind of like psychological effect where you're always self-censoring, so it's there's this like kind of really sneaky element of it, right? Like if oh well, I shouldn't be doing something bad, then you're gonna like change your behavior and act in a certain way that isn't exactly natural, right? It kind of forces this like weird layer on top of like your actions and your behaviors. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about as well. Just like, are you really free to have an opinion if you feel like there might be consequences? Subconsciously, you always know that someone's watching you, and is that really what we want? Some of the papers that
I think this is a very good point.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to add, and then we'll move on to the next question, that we were talking about the WikiLeaks documents, and one of the things that's really interesting to read is some of the stuff that was leaked years back, and that's like the GCHQ handbook, and you can see how they manipulate online polls, and how they infiltrate groups, and how they basically like the ways that they destroy people's lives for their own political ends. It's really creepy. I would suggest that everyone go and check that out. Like it was leaked. You can have a look at the tools and the way I think they call it gambits of deception. And it's super sneaky. They're like emailing your grandmother, telling your grandmother that you hate her, trying to destroy relationships, text your wife, tell her you're having an affair, so much creepy stuff. I think for the average person that thinks like, oh, this kind of, does sort of goes by this line of like, why do you care? Like, if you're not doing anything wrong, well, just look into how they treat people. Look into like how they act, and I think you'll be quite shocked. So I just wanted to throw that in there. To move on to the next question, I guess, talking about, I think you touched a little bit on cryptocurrencies. So I want to ask, how do financial institutions how does their control over our money affect our freedom from domination by these nation states and their empires?
Well, there are a lot of good examples from that. A recent case that is quite interesting. The info is how after the Ukrainian invasion started, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. was able to freeze massive funds that belong to oligarchs, Russian oligarchs. And this is an example to say, it's not political talk like, oh no, poor oligarchs. No, absolutely. But this is to say that if you don't have the keys, that's not your money. Money in a bank account doesn't belong to you; it belongs to the bank, and that's pretty clear. I think the bank can freeze your funds, it can close your account, and in that case, there isn't much you can do. And the oligarch example, of course, if I take it out because it's a political case, but you have to realize that this practice of freezing funds and closing bank accounts and stuff happens a lot of times to people, activists, political people who are claimed to be terrorists. But what does terrorism mean? We're not talking about ISIS or Al Qaeda or something. No, we are talking about political activists, people who in the country are maybe advocating for democracy or advocating for women's rights or human's rights. We're talking that kind of people, and it's very easy. Actually, it's a very common tactic for most governments around the world to call activists in their own country, in their own borders, terrorists. And in the moment, we see it's possible for governments through banks to freeze your funds, freeze your money, and basically leave you on the streets if they just consider a terrorist. There you have the answer to your question. That money isn't really yours. If you can't protect it, if you can't manage it on your own, is it really yours? No, it isn't. That's it. This is why autonomy is crucial. This is why you need decentralization, because the problem here is basically centralization. The fact that all the control, all the power, all the agency is in the hands of the most powerful in the room. But decentralization is the key. It's the perfect solution to this because it basically allows a community its sovereignty. Autonomy is crucial in freedom. What you were saying before about, I really like the example you were saying before about how creepy all those intelligence techniques are, how sneaky they are, how they can destroy your life with horrible tactics. I like that example a lot because it really shows the mindset of power, the mindset of oppression, of domination. I'm very happy you brought it up because it's exactly how we see it as well. And having autonomy over your own finances, having autonomy in your community means you have political agency in your community. It means you can actually build freedom because, as you were saying before, are we free if we are constantly surveilled? Well, no, we're not. And are we free if our money isn't ours, if our money can be frozen at any time if we say something that goes against the powerful one? Again, we are not very easily. And LunarPunk offers a vision for this. It offers a vision of autonomy, of decentralization, and of sovereignty. And LunarDAO is the manifestation of that vision. This is our mission, basically.
Okay, and that's a great segue into my next question, which is how does LunarDAO provide a strategy for advancing this cypherpunk mission and resisting the surveillance state's attacks on the crypto economy?
Oh, LunarPath vision is based on the cypherpunk critiques, the predicts towards the center authority hegemony. There's this whole analysis of the expanding panopticon of this bare desert. And we build upon those, but the difference is that LunarPunks are not dystopian. We want to expand those analyses and those critiques by basically developing a moral infrastructure and decentralized communities and look for ways how we can create the autonomous zones, as we before poetically called the dark forest of anonymity. Basically, our thesis is that the people who build and who develop solutions for anonymity and privacy will be facing difficulties and increasing difficulties in finding any support. We see a lot of traditional like VCs, investment funds, and ventures in crypto. That's hard to imagine they will want to put their reputation on supporting something which is highly criminalized, and that can become pretty quickly, looking at the Tornado Cash example. There will basically unravel a dynamic where the teams developing these solutions will be forced to sell their work underpriced and go into some sort of illegality. And so their work to counterparties who don't care about the vision, don't care about these solutions. For them, it's gonna become a group who's gonna like sell cheaper for investors who will know that they're in a pretty cornered situation. And such scenario portrays privacy as taboo. Fight their soul because they will present under stress, and there's this dynamic. The whole value of what they're building and these communities is extracted from the ecosystem, right? And this is a future that we don't accept. In fact, we see a prospect of privacy being ultimately bullish, and LunarDAO offer a solution. Our community, or the people who will be investing, we call it the LunarPunks quote. We'll allocate resources together and create what we call this code wealth. And then the DAO will leverage the collective power of different anonymous members and become an investor itself. Then the squad, the voting community, they discuss and they democratically vote on which tools are needed, which projects to support, and what can actually empower that ecosystem. And we evaluate, we vote, and support, like carry on the support to whichever team is needed. Basically, become the venture, become like the decentralized anonymous fund for e-solutions. Which as a result will mean that these projects will get supported, will also get supported by people who are aligned with their mission. It's almost like this, like headless hydra, because maybe you can pick some of the people who are part of the DAO. You can try to push on them, but because it's a DAO, it's an organization across continents and countries, it's completely impossible to just like crash the whole organization. And more we are, the more anonymity, the higher is the anonymity set, right? The Ps will be provided with the needed resources. They will grow or develop the needed tools. And on the other hand, we also need to think about the DAO members investing in these solutions. So then the treasury will accumulate the supported privacy assets and manage it as like a common fund, like as a common portfolio of these privacy assets together. Result of that is that the value is also conserved in the ecosystem, and both parties, the developing teams and the DAO members, they profit from this upcoming cycle, which they themselves creating and ensuring to happen. Need to say that there is the liberation of a collective power, but every individual is protected against like this majority rule, because you can easily create a DAO which is you're gonna call it decentralized, but in fact it's gonna work just as a smaller state. And we don't want that. So everyone can exit the DAO at any times with 100% of their shares, 100% redeem without any fee. It's basically a strategy in like a thesis we have. Because the rule of tightening regulations and enduring demand for privacy and anonymity, as I was saying, will happen, yes or yes. But it's up to us where we end up in this taboo, in this like complete desert, dystopian, panopticon-like looking world, or will we actually strengthen ourselves and come into ways and strategies now to capture that value, how we can together grow solutions and squad wealth as well, in opposition to just like be stick with like this like RegFi, where a lot of crypto got captured under this like KYC cycle. We definitely not aiming to confront the nation state. Our focus is to provide the means for people to have agency and together make decisions in their own lives. Besides that, that also means to bring education, sharing resources, and creating strong narrative, network, community, and ecosystem.
Okay. Well, that again brings me another good segue into something that I guess is quite exciting right now in the crypto ecosystem, and that is ZK, zero knowledge cryptography. So I just asked you how LunarDAO provides a strategy for advancing the cypherpunk mission and resisting surveillance state attacks. And I think ZK is a big part of that. At least as far as I'm aware, it looks extremely promising. So how can LunarPunks use this new way of doing things, zero knowledge cryptography, to create decentralized and private networks to defend themselves and liberate themselves from state persecution? How does zero knowledge cryptography provide these benefits to people?
On the question how LunarPunks use zero knowledge cryptography and can create decentralized and private networks for self-defense and liberation. Well, not too long ago, I was reading on a DarkFi testnet announcement, and honestly, this provides part of the answer for what you're asking here. And this is not for me to say to show the project, but there is this one primitive which we're really looking into, and I think it's missing a lot, and that is anonymous DAOs, anonymous DAO primitive to say better. And that's something we have really on our radar and got very excited about. In fact, I'll admit fully among the founders, and we spoke about it also on our roadmap completely transparently, that the LunarDAO's would be nice if would be voting on investing into the team to deliver, to develop and test properly and put on a mainnet this primitive of anonymous DAO. And then next having a discussion and vote on migration to such primitive and go out of ETH into whatever network will be running on. Another one, Monero is undergoing quite an upgrade on the ring signature. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't read into the documentation yet, but that anonymity set, having that upgrade will basically create or put Monero in an unstoppable position after that. An important thing is that for us, like the privacy coins or privacy crypto solutions, it's important to point out because there's many projects using those like buzzwords for marketing, and they're not really any of those. But on the other hand, I wish that privacy crypto is something which we're just gonna call money one day, But also on this ZK solution and the cryptography, you had this point in the beginning speaking about the elections in the UK. And this brings us to interesting point when people would have arguments why to be anon in that, why to be anonymous and private in that. And indeed, there is many instances when you don't want to be anonymous, use like voice modifier and all that kind of stuff, right? In fact, there are moments when you even need to somewhat verify some credentials. For example, in some sort of vote that you're not voting as multiple people. And I'm not here speaking of governmental elections. I'm speaking of actually useful things which can improve people's lives. Not choosing another somebody else who's gonna steal from you and run like the side of your life.
Yeah.
And then we come to the fact of the anonymity Doesn't have to be for everyone and forever, but it's a good default strategy from which using zero knowledge proofs and this cryptography, different information, credentials, and verifications can be disclosed. But it should be on a choice of a user or choice of a community or choice of whoever runs and provides this, but not on that the user or like the volder has to go to find another form to opt out, as you said, right? To flip this mentality about what's default and what's based on like chosen disclosure, and using zero knowledge for that and not using a full ID, KYC, passport kind of information. I have another argument for why I think this is very important, because even if folks don't see their governments as something dangerous for having these data, don't see all these like big corporates like as a threat for basically using their data for profit, they still should consider one thing, and that is, if you believe your government now, today, and the government's gonna change into more authoritarian one, into a pure fascist government, they're not gonna be asking you if you wanna change your mind and take your data away. You see what I mean? So I think by having the anonymity as default and being able to disclose, you're protecting yourself also for the future, because these metadata, they'll be never erased. And again, we coming back to zero knowledge cryptography, which can provide a lot of these solutions. And I'm very glad to see that we got some people from the Linux community and from the crypto community and some hackers and privacy-oriented developers who are learning, researching, and also implementing and teaching on cryptography and on the usage of zero knowledge and proofs and verification.
Unchecked governments have eradicated privacy and truth. Those who resist are brought down swiftly, but we refuse to submit. Lunarpunks are freedom fighters, protected by encrypted shadows. The future we're building is sovereign and uncensorable. The moonlit night is coming.
LunarDAO is an investment fund based on Lunarpunk philosophy. Sovereign individuals assemble squad wealth to leverage collective strength, become investors, and allocate funds into privacy projects and anonymity tooling, building a portfolio of supported privacy assets. By this, LunarDAO supports the developing teams, expands freedom and crypto sovereignty, and captures value in the upcoming privacy cycle. Any member can exit the squad at any time. Members are anonymous, hence can build Lunarpunk vision without fear of frozen funds, legal implications, or any kind of repression. LunarDAO aims to move to a full Anon setup and expand the Lunarpunk forest of encryption, a sanctuary where society can redefine itself, self-administrate and regain its economic, political, and moral agency. LunarDAO also supports research on privacy technologies, listed in the wiki at wiki.lunardao.net, and educational structures such as Adalin Academy at adalinacademy.org, where people can acquire knowledge and master skills in programming and economy while developing a philosophical frame to generate the future path of the Lunarpunk ecosystem. The launch is coming soon. Stay tuned and follow Lunarpunk Squad on Twitter. Just to add to, what you were talking about, sort of revealing the data and selectively revealing it, I think maybe one way to look at it is that you already expect and I guess enjoy privacy in the physical world, right? This is in some ways a problem that's escalating because of the digital nature of our environment now and our lives. So, I mean, before, right, like think about the difference, right? For someone to be able to like look into your personal life, they have to break into your house, they have to go into your filing cabinet, they have to read your letters, your post, they have to look through your photo albums, all that kind of stuff. But now we live in this digital age where your photos are in the cloud, your contacts are in the cloud, all your social data, your communications with people, that's on Facebook's Meta servers, Twitter servers. And so in some ways it's easy for it to slip away, and also for people not to notice it, because like you're saying, we should really have privacy as default. It should be default because it kind of is already in a sense. Like we're just but we've only recently, really, in the past couple of decades, moved into the information age. And that's where it's always been a problem. Of course, governments have always spied on people. But now they have, the tools of computers and just computation. They can run through the data. They can see patterns. Much easier to surveil people. So essentially, we're sort of just in a way of looking at it, asking for like a return in some sense. In some sense, it's quite a conservative ideology or philosophy. And I don't know if you would agree with that. That's kind of how I see it. Like, cash is anonymous. Like, if I give someone a $10 bill or a £10 note right now, no one knows about it. It's not tracked. Yeah, maybe in some way, forensic way, and there's like a serial number. There's like basic tracking you can do on these things. But for the most part, cash hand-to-hand transfers is quite private. And same with the rest of your life. Like, if you take photos of your family, on an old school camera, maybe even a digital camera, not a recent one that has all these smart features and that like automatically syncs to the cloud, and you can upload Facebook and straight to Instagram from your cameras these days. But for the most part, if you took a photo in the old days, it stayed on your camera. It was on your roll of film until you got it developed, right? Everything was private. So I just think that's interesting for people to think about, right? Like it was only a decade ago, maybe 2 decades ago, that we didn't really have this issue as much. Like I say, of course, governments have always spied on people, and same with the powerful as well. Of course, Microsoft and Google, they've owned the infrastructure and the technology. They make the technology, and have done for a long time now. They've had these monopolies, so of course they've spied on people. But before those big corporations and before the like enlargement of the state, I guess we did enjoy a little more freedom and a little more privacy. So yeah, I don't know. Do you think you guys agree? Do you think we're kind of like we're in a transitionary phase now? It's actually more important than ever to recognize where we're heading with this.
When I was a teenager, I read a book, and it was like a primer on how to prevent infiltration in people's movements. All right, like we're in like activist groups and stuff. There was this chapter which basically was saying, get into a culture of hugging each other in the beginning of important meetings, because if you have an agent, they'll have this big microphone under their t-shirt and you will feel it on your chest, except the hugging each other is quite nice. So that was kind of like the level which, the folks were operating in, to find out if somebody is recording to them, right? Fast forward pretty quickly, actually. Now we are in the age which you just described, so I'm not going to repeat that. But one thing people don't realize often also is the usage of clouds. No, it's basically what call is. You're putting your data on someone else's computer. That's what call is. So not your keys, not your money, right? Not your keys, not your data. Same thing. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that as well. And I think an interesting point, you mentioned it a couple of times, that surveillance have evolved over the years, side by side with technology. Because of course, government have always spied on people, because that's part of the mechanism of the mission, right? In order to dominate, to keep your power, you have to keep it by force. You have to impose it and check whether people are organizing against you or not. So surveillance is inevitably linked to to that type of state surveillance or sort of dominion. And as you said, technology have advanced, and that have made surveillance a lot more effective, like significantly. Even something that it's apparently innocent, like a cloud, can be a massive potential data leak for your privacy. But the bright side of this is that technology has also evolved for the people. That's the point. The whole point about privacy. You don't need a crazy amount of knowledge to start improving your privacy. Of course, the more you skill, the more you know, the better it is. Naturally, education is crucial in this. But you can start with teeny tiny steps, and that's already something. Now you don't have to take the full, to go full unvogue all of a sudden. No, you can start with small things, and I think that's a good approach for someone who, for example, has never been into technology before. Because some tools might definitely look like scary. If you have never considered using something else than WhatsApp, if I go tell you, start using IRCD or something like that, you might be like, what? Like, no, it's too difficult, and I'm just not going to try this. And that's understandable, of course. So tiny steps that already would beginning, because privacy really, it's all about a mindset. There is a technical part, of course, but the mindset is what really matters. How you educate yourself, how you create around yourself a community of people who support this idea, how you take the small steps that will gradually lead you to a more private environment. And then, of course, you can grow it. So, yeah, I totally agree with what you said. I think it's a really good point.
Well, I think if you you made me think about simple things, and if you look at the current trend of people using VPNs, while I'm not necessarily a fan of the way in which VPNs are marketed to people, and the way in which they're kind of like misled on the idea that like it's completely private and you don't want anyone to snoop on you. Like, we all know, like, NordVPN or SharkVPN, all these companies, like, they're not resisting the government. They're like, if the government wants to come for your data, like these massive corporations, the big players, like, they're gonna give you up, and so I think it's kind of like misleading, the marketing, the way they put these things out there. But at the same time, it does have the benefit of getting it in the public consciousness, that maybe there is some benefit, to having like private networks, secure networks. And just as a basic example, people, this is an immediately obvious one, again, because of the trend in VPNs. Look at in a sense, look at the benefit that you get while it's only minor and sort of like frivolous or vacuous. The fact that you don't have your location tracked, or you have it like scrambled in some way, allows you to watch, content from the UK when you're on, when you're living in America and you're using the Netflix app, whether it's on Hulu or Prime or anything like that. While it's not it's not a great example of liberation and freedom, and it is one that people know about, right? And that's just one way in which, like, hiding your location or changing location or having some like form of privacy or privacy tooling enables you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So I think that's just like a really small example that people can kind of chew on and see, like, how these things are beneficial, right? Like, and you can expand that to commerce, right? Maybe Amazon doesn't allow you to buy certain things, or maybe not Amazon, maybe other marketplaces. You're not allowed to see certain films and certain music, access certain scientific publications, and some of these things are based on your location, and that's how they decide that. They track you and they analyze your location, and then they provide the only the services that you're allowed to access in that location. So yeah, I think that's like a small example that maybe is going to be helpful to people. And I guess so the next question I want to ask is, because we've talked about LunarDAO, talked about privacy tooling and why people should care, why people need it, and the dangers that we face. So I guess I want to ask, like, how can people get involved? How can they contribute to building this ecosystem? What's the best way for people to get involved? Obviously, outside of contributing to LunarDAO, what are other ways that they can kind of dip the toes in, get the feet wet? As you just talked about, there are very start simple. So what may be some simple ways that people can contribute and get involved?
Right. So first of all, understanding freedom not of an individual dimension, but of a collective dimension. It's something to begin with. So create community, join a community, create community around yourself, connecting with others who are into this topic, who are aligned with your values or your mission. No matter, how much they're like technical people, you can, start building a community. And this is as a very small step. It's not a massive step. You can just join a forum, or you can, answering on comments and get in touch with people. That's a great way to begin. Of course, you have to start protecting yourself in the moment you do this. Starting to get involved in this topic means that those skills that you start getting, that knowledge you start getting, you will have to apply for your own safety, for your own security. And as I said before, you can start with a small thing. We know a VPN is not totally safe, but still, it's better to have one than to have none. So that's something you can start with. You can, of course, invest in this if you are into that. Investing in privacy technology in this historical moment is crucial. Privacy and surveillance, and the struggle between privacy and surveillance is happening right now. If our future, if what's happening is what's gonna happen, you want to be ready for this. It's not something that's like, it may happen in the future. It's happening right now. So investing, in the case of LunarDAO, of course, you can get shares in our treasury. You can become an investor yourself, or you can promote a project that you have, and you promote it in the DAO and see if people are going to invest in it or not. This is another big step that you can take in order to contribute to this movement, to this vision, because this movement really is for everyone. Sometimes the world of technology and the world of privacy are seen as something very vague somehow. Like, if I'm not a dev, I cannot join this community. It's not true. Everyone has something to give, and anyone has something to gain in this. So, of course, we need technical skills. No, I'm not saying, we are fine with no skills. No, we need a lot of technical skills. But first of all, you need the mindset. You can, for example, the moment you join the DAO, even, let's say you left field, or you are learning, or you are in the first steps and stuff like that, you are already part of a community, and that community is going to support you. You can ask questions, you can ask for help in doing a certain setups, you can ask for feedback, you can take decisions. You can join a democratic decision-making process about the investments, like what investments are we going to make, or how do we manage our funds, which projects are we going to support, or how the governance is going to look like, and, stuff like that. So you can become a very active and crucial part of this community. As we said, education is crucial here, because education gives you the tools, it gives you the mindset, it gives you the skills to protect yourself and protect the community. So research is crucial here. If you are interested in the topic and you want to know more about it, go make your research or join a group who's making research already. We have a research commission, for example, because we realize how crucial it is. Sharing knowledge, producing knowledge, getting knowledge from other people is crucial. It creates a community that's strong. That if I am not super skilled in something, maybe you are. That we can share that. We are stronger together. This is why I was saying before, freedom is collective. We can be free together. But if we are isolated, if we are off-lived, in our own world, and we are cut from all social connections, how can we be free? In a surveillance state, in a world that spies and sneaks on us, we cannot. Very simply. So freedom is collective, and it requires a community. This is I think for us, this is quite a crucial point. To talk about more technical stuff, please learn Linux. Please get into the free software movement, research about that, start using free softwares. That is quite crucial. Of course, maybe it's not super easy to begin with, and this is why, getting in touch with people who can help you is crucial. But you need to master a certain type of skill. You will be able to master it in a short amount of time, probably. For example, if you want to learn how to code and you want to learn about the economy, you want to study philosophy, and get into this LunarPunk vision 360, you can have a look at an academy, for example, which is one of the potential projects written down. There are many ways. This is what I want to say. And none of these ways, unfortunately, allows you to be alone by yourself, because really we need to collectivize freedom. We need to see it as a collective act. And a community like the LunarPunk community allows you to do so. And to be honest, it's a very welcoming community. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what level of skills or ideological mindset you have, there is a place for everyone, and there is something that anyone. Hey, that for me is free.
Yeah, and I just want to point out to people that's one of the cool things about DAOs and decentralization, and I guess this kind of like new digital social economy that is kind of appearing in front of us. Like before, there was a lot of like meetup groups and there's unions and there's but now we have kind of a way to kind of transact free of the sort of traditional institutions, and we're a lot more free. We're able to like onboard people into the process. So like traditionally, if you want to like have, I guess, an organization, then you have to have people on the books. You got to go through all these government checks. You got to like do some stuff with the bank. Like this new kind of like crypto ecosystem allows people to create organizations that can spin up in a week, for example, and you can easily onboard new people into the organization. And there's a lot more sort of because of the sort of structure of these things, they're a lot more creative and a lot more welcoming. And so my point being, I would just say to anyone that wants to get involved, as you just said, there are many skills that are needed, because I think the kind of like the values and the philosophy that are essentially underpin DAOs is that like people should be able to contribute like where they're at and have like I guess their own kind of control over their own time and their own contributions, rather than it being kind of like the old kind of like worker slave mentality, that whole paradigm. It's a lot more free. And so yeah, if you like math, if you read a lot, like you said, there's we need people that research. If you're creative, maybe you make good graphics. It could be anything. Maybe you just enjoy debating, right? Even that's helpful. Just helping people to iron out issues, just using your mind. That's it, and typing in the forums. So yeah, don't feel like there's anyone out there that wants to get involved in this stuff. and want to, get involved and help LunarDAO, then don't be put off by like the technical stuff that can come later. But yeah, there's definitely a place for everyone. So yeah, and I just wanted to say, I think this will be the last question. So we're because we're running out of time now. You said that we want to be ready because it's sort of like the time is now. We need to be ready now. And so I guess what I want to ask, what kind of challenges, like why is it now? Like what challenges are we facing? You touched upon this kind of cycle and this feedback loop where surveillance kind of pushes people into privacy tools. So what are the biggest challenges that we face right now in order to maintain this liberatory mission of crypto? In the face of the increased regulation and scrutiny, what are some of the challenges, and where should we be moving towards?
Right. Well, there are a lot of challenges here, really. Left with the creation of the community, it's not easy, and we are aware of that, but it is very much needed. As we were saying before, if you're alone, you're more vulnerable to the attacks of the system. So you need to think collectively. You need to organize collectively, and of course, community creation takes time, and it's not easy thing to do. It requires effort. So that is the first challenge, naturally. Then, in talking about the more economical part, so economical sovereignty, the current scenario is quite worrying. In inflation on fiat money is quite important right now. There are wars, embargoes in a lot of countries. For example, in North and East Syria, where the Rojava revolution happened, they have quite a crazy situation because are relying on the fiat money of the Syrian states, which have a lot of problems, and falling under an international embargo because of the Syria regime, and then the devastating war that's been going on for years. Yeah, parts of the Turkish state and ISIS. That's the type of situation which people are facing, and so the times, when you have to think about economic authority, you have to think of context like Bentham, right? There are many difficulties that you may want to face, but even in that scenario, people in North and East Syria are being able to build their sovereignty, through a collective lifestyle, through a collective economy, and that's no easy task, really. But the intention is that, and even if the tools are quite limited in a specific context because of all the difficulties we mentioned, it's an experiment that's been going on for like 10 years, so it's working. Nothing is perfect, but it's there and it's working and it's functioning and people are relying on it. Our interesting case, difficulty and challenge that we can get is like, not all people are fit to having, for example, a bank account. Not all people are fit to being visible in the eye of the state because you may have problems with your documents. You may be a refugee. You may be a politically exposed person who is facing repression. And that's the thing, that's actually the thing that happens to a lot of people. And this is why we have to overcome the KYC infrastructures and create anonymous ones. And actually, there are a lot of activists who use anonymous tools, anonymous crypto, in order to survive. This is the opposite of what they say, privacy for criminals. No, how privacy is for people to be able to live in a lot of context. another challenge, we need better tech. We need to invest in good tech. We need to invest in good tools, whether it's hardware, whether it's software. We need to implement our tools. And this is what we were saying before, when you mentioned the surveillance technology is constantly growing and you have evolved a lot over the years. But yeah, also privacy technology has evolved massively over the years. For example, thanks to cypherpunk movement, they did a whole lot here. They pushed the bar up and up, and they beat up a vanguard, basically. And then the movement, I mean, if it fit this somehow, but we need more. We need to push the bar up. We need quality, so this is why we think having an investment fund is quite crucial, because you cannot just set with what we have. Of course, there are some already good tools. I'm not saying we are in a completely desperate situation, but we need more, we need better. We need to think big, we have to invest in good tools. There are a lot of good projects out there that are just waiting for so long to invest in those. That is it's a challenge, but it's also a massive opportunity that we have. Another point, I think, at least for our case, it's something we see very clearly. We need to build the narrative. As we were saying before, a lot of people not only are not educated in technology and therefore are not aware of how much they are actually exposed online, but they are also not aware of the issue of technology and privacy in the first place. If I'm not aware of what surveillance is, how can I be concerned with privacy in the first place? So creating a narrative, implementing the LunarDAO narrative, and bring it out, bring it to people, bring it on there in the internet. I think this is a big challenge for us right now. We have to make this look like something everyone can approach, because we don't really have a choice. As surveillance data is there. It's already there. If not, something might happen. We are in it already. And privacy is a measure we have to take right now. There is no maybe, there is no tomorrow. No, it's something we have to do right now. So we are sure that the LunarDAO narrative provides a rather good example on how this happens. The dark cycle. So the more surveillance governments and companies impose, the more users will go dark and go anonymous, go private, etc. But this will only lead to more surveillance, because, of course, this is not like a one-night battle, like, we won it, that's it. No, it's call it a struggle, because it is. Now it's a struggle along more paths. So the more surveillance, the more anonymity, the more surveillance. So we cannot afford to sit and be like, we're good with what we have. No, we are never good with what we have. So a big challenge for us right now is how to bring our narrative out there. The narrative is there, the community is building it free. LunarDAO emerged from the LunarPunk movement, from its narrative. So we are just contributing, but a lot of people online are contributing. I don't think quite make challenge with education. And I mean, as we said before, so I won't really repeat myself. We need education in tech. We need education in privacy. We need women in technology, to be honest, because there is still quite an impressive gap. So education is something we all must aim for. No matter the level of your skills, you can always have more education on this, whether it's for technical stuff, whether it's for the narrative or like philosophy, having a vision of the world that actually is able to read the current state of things. Because really, this is not just about technology; it's also about technology, because technology is an amazing invention for humans. It's how we interact with the world, but we have to be able to read and understand the world. So philosophy is also a big part of this. So education, by education, I don't want to mean learn Linux, like, yes, also, but let's talk together on how can we interpret modern day problems. How can we interpret democracy, for example, or how can we create a democratic decision-making process? inside a community. So I will definitely say these are our main challenges right now. I would add one of the things which the knowledge on all of the I both mentioned and the strong narrative and stuff kind of closes the circle is to create strong analysis and understand where we are at, understanding the history and having but not a prediction on how future will be and then be surprised if it's not going the way we expected, but rather having different outcomes and position ourselves in like anti-fragile movement, however the future is gonna unravel. By that, we see how crypto basically has been seen as one of these like TradFi dollar-nominated risky assets, now just like another kind of like correlated with the tech. We could see what was happening in when COVID hit. There was the message draw now, but then the money printer in the US went on and in many other states, and all of a sudden Bitcoin goes from 3K to like 70K. But because people putting this rented from air money into crypto, and everyone's kind of like hyping that, and there's this big fuck. But at the same time, this works like a temperature check for the governments who are like, oh, hold on, this is, the inflation was completely crazy, and starts to blame and scapegoating crypto. And then the reaction is that a big part of the community and the people in the crypto and many of those leaders, the self-crowned kings, they basically try to look like a part of this traditional finance and want to like appease but that doesn't change anything because with stop the print money and hiking the rates, what's going on is that crypto goes sharply down, and it's almost like a nice hygiene. A lot of people start to spread FUD, and a lot of people start to be scared. But one thing it's a nice hygiene is because this literally resulted in cutting the heads off of these so-called self-crowned kings, like we saw it with the VAC, with Suzu, we saw it with FTX, and all these charlatans out there, right? And now we are like in a situation when banks are actually getting bankrupt. We just recently saw the Silicon Valley Bank going belly out, almost, and then and again, this will be broadcasted later, so I don't know how these things will unravel, and it's not very important. But what I mean, possibilities are that the money printer is gonna be turned back on, Bitcoin's gonna sharply rally again. But we need to understand that every next rally, every next upcycle will be more hated than the one before, by media, by politicians, and by regulators especially. And the cypherpunk movement evolved. This is only my guess, like much farther than some of the early OGs would even imagine, no?
Absolutely.
But I think the best celebration of their success and give meaning to their original ideas is to address and keep developing. Because a lot of the tools which were cutting edge yesterday will not be enough against the surveillance measures tomorrow, but also in the narrative sense. And I'm trying to reinvent the wheel. Now we don't need like 100 versions of Bitcoin, which has like different logo, but a same code, or 1,000 versions of Ethereum, kind of chains with much less of a liquidity, but there's still the same problems of a transparency be never solved. I actually think that celebrating Satoshi is to bring an innovation solving unresolved problems and pushing the narrative farther and bring in alternative possibilities for people to join, because they'll realize when they are once the things start to crumble, the connections and the possibilities we're creating now and the narrative we offer will be found by those who find themselves in that situation and by the curious hearts. So all of a sudden we find ourselves in a movement which is growing dramatically and quickly, and we need to be able to provide some of the solutions and if asked some of the answers, rather than to try to appease somebody, to appeal to them nicely now, there'll be a moment when, we will draw and scale up very quickly, and I'm sure about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add that, to speak on what you said about the KYC stuff earlier. It's usually, I think, as you kind of alluded to, it's not criminals that get impacted by this. It's usually the poorest and most I guess underappreciated or underserved members of society. It's not like the average middle class person or upper class. It's actually the little man and the man on the street that struggles. It's the poorest amongst us. But obviously, the narrative is that it's we're trying to stop criminals and we need to do this because we need to track everyone to keep everyone safe. But it's just not the case. And so yeah, on just to finish then, you were talking about like what challenges we face, and so how can people help with these challenges? How can they get involved? How can they find out about LunarDAO and start learning? Where do they need to go?
Um, there is a whole bunch of possibilities how to find us, from more like a techie archive, or we now use github.com/LunarDAO, all the way to the landing page. So that's like maybe the first steps to go, LunarDAO.net. And from there, on top, you gotta have navigation to how to join a community. The soft landing one, yeah, I'll admit that, meet people where they at, is Telegram. Same, yeah, on Ethereum starting, because you need to start somewhere and use that existing tech and the liquidity in order to build the LunarDAO, right? So there is the soft landing Telegram, but you can go farther with installing IRCD, a wonderful full anonymous chatting tool. You can join our self-hosted forum on forum.lunardao.net. We are at LunarBank Squad on Twitter. Still not banned, still out there. There is a wiki, and there is a whole bunch of articles and all that stuff. So spend time by. You can start on LunarDAO.net. That will get you anywhere. One thing I want to touch upon is the voice modifier and how it comes through. For people, this might be found quite strange, unnecessary, or even scary. There are two reasons why we do that. One is obviously to protect the founders of the DAO and their identity, but even more important, so to give some protection to the community and to the decentralization of that organization. So it's not, once again, based on a reputation of some occult leader or somebody like that. Anyone can sit on this chair here next to me tomorrow, really. It's about to build on the ideas, on the narrative, on the vision and mission, and on the code, on which we're putting out there, not on particular names and figures. And secondly, there'll always be this frame of they'll be building dark markets, or supporting, maybe to say better, side and take credit for something we don't do, investing and supporting in dark markets, such as I was saying before, in the privacy crypto should just be called money. If we look around the world, really, what the governments called dark markets is what most of the people in different places would call market, just by default, by how people operate, and how any like street market in most of the world works. That's a basic definition of people's markets.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And yeah, it's I agree. It's an interesting shift in the way that people view the world. Like you say, a dark market is actually just a market. The only reason it's dark is because it's not surveilled, tracked, or maybe even taxed. And so, by sort of default in the existing paradigm, that's somehow bad or unethical. But as you say, when you actually think about it, just trade, peer-to-peer trade is technically a dark market, or it's a dark trade, at least dark commerce. So yeah, thanks for coming, guys. That was really interesting. I hope people learn a lot from this. Obviously, we'll include all the links in the description below, where they can find you guys, LunarDAO.net. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video. And thanks for coming. Peace.